This is my interview with Bob Flitton. This is Rob Flitton carrying on. We just finished talking about a big moment in Bob's life in 1981 when he was instrumental in helping a big political movement in Kamloops win the election for Bill Bennett and his Social Credit Party. This is sort of the entry into Bob's more elevated career in politics. What happened to your sort of party status after winning that election for the Socreds? And you were going to tell us about a bulldozer.
Oh,
It was a comment in the paper.
we won the election. It was unexpected. Nobody thought we were going to win, but we had predicted we were going to win, and we actually wrote down the percentages in each party that we thought we would get. And amazingly enough, these numbers are all printed in the local newspaper at the time, but our forecast of what vote we would get and what the other parties would get was dead accurate. It was amazingly accurate. And they interviewed the losing NDP candidate who was very confident that he was going to win, but lost. And then they asked him what happened, and he said, "Well, to be honest with you," he said, "the battles were fought in the trenches. What we didn't realize was they had bulldozers." So it was an interesting comment. But
So you're in Kamloops. It's 1981. Suddenly, out of the blue, you're working with a good friend of yours named Barry Clark at Aberdeen Hills at the time, and you get an offer to go to Vancouver.
Barry's wife came to me and said, "You know, Bob," he said, "we're destitute. Barry's out of work and he needs something to do. We're broke. We don't have any money. Is there anything you can do to help us out?" And I said, "Well, send Barry up to see me and I'll give him a job." And I hired him to help me with the development of Aberdeen Hills. And I remember his clothes were so bad that I had to take him down to a menswear store and buy him a set of clothes and charge it off to the company, and just to kind of get him going. But ultimately, he took over from me and became a very good manager at Aberdeen Hills for a number of years. And I moved down to Vancouver with Bentall Group and took over the management of a project in Surrey called Fraser Glen, where we developed a number of lots and sold a bunch of houses. I remember the first sale that we had there was a very low part of the market, or one of the low times in the marketplace. Interest rates were very high. Things were doom and gloom, but we put up, I don't remember the number, 69 lots or something one day on a Saturday for sale, and we sold them all and sold them for above average market price. So it was a successful project.
Times were really tough in that couple of years. In Kamloops, in Aberdeen, the lot sales were really hard. They had to come up with sales gimmicks just to sell lots. Then you moved to Vancouver. You had a tough time selling your own house in Kamloops. And then you moved to West Vancouver, and it's sort of like you're in the middle of this very tough economic time.
We bought a nice home in West Vancouver, 179 grand, if I remember correctly. And I got a job as a development manager of the city of Port Moody, where we started a project called Heritage Mountain. I was actually the person that named the project Heritage Mountain.
We're sitting in Port Moody today.
I recommended the name to council one day, and I remember a councilor by the name of Art Wilkinson made a motion to accept the recommendation of Heritage Mountain. That's how it all came about. But while I was there, working with Port Moody, I got a call from the Premier's office, Mike Bailey in Victoria, saying, "Come on over to Victoria, we want you to be Deputy Minister of Lands, Parks and Housing." So I moved to Victoria. We sold our house in West Vancouver, paid I think around 179. I sold it for about 140. That's how much the market had dropped. Imagine a nice single family home in Vancouver, for West Vancouver, for 140,000. But we moved to Victoria, where I became Deputy Minister of Lands, Parks and Housing, and worked for the Premier. He said to me, "Bob, you did a really good job for us in the campaigning last couple of elections, 1981, 83, when they beat the NDP. He said, "Land is our biggest asset in this province. It should be something that's positive within government, but unfortunately it's the most negative thing we have. We get more complaints about our handling of land matters in the province than we do anything else. I'd like you to go in and clean that up." So I took over that job and I really enjoyed it. Later became Forest Lands, and then I went on to Energy Mines Petroleum Resources, and then Deputy Minister of Transportation and Highways when I left the government in 1989.
So you were there 6, 7 years, 8 years total somewhere?
No, 4.5 years.
4.5 years.
Yeah.
And that was in Victoria the whole time. You
Yeah.
got to see the entire province.
Oh, everywhere. We went 100% of the Queen Charlotte Islands. We went all up through the North Atlant, out into northeast, down all through the southeast Cranbrook area. It was great. I went to parks, Cinnamon, for example, one of the most beautiful places on earth. It was
That was your job to get to know basically every corner of the province.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
got to see it all.
We did.
You took me up on a helicopter trip over the Charlottes one time for 3 days. Do you remember that? A couple days?
I don't remember that.
About 1985. You took me, I met you in the Queen Charlottes, and I got to go on a helicopter trip with you.
Yeah, good. I just don't remember.
We
but-
probably misappropriated government funds. Kidding.
I
So
really
then-
don't know.
But you got to go with all kinds of interesting people too, businessmen, logging tycoons, people that had mining interests or whatever all over the province that you were sort of integrating with or communicating with. And saw all kinds of fantastic industry and parks. Do you have any sort of interesting stories? Were you attacked once by like a grizzly bear or something?
Oh, that was in the Bower Lake Chain. We were in a helicopter, and as we came down to settle the helicopter on the ground, we were about 3 feet off the ground and looked up, and here was this great, huge grizzly bear charging at us. You can't believe how fast those things can move. And I remember the helicopter pilot said, whoops, and he reversed the direction and started lifting off the ground. We were probably 12 feet off the ground, and the bear went running right underneath us. It was an amazing thing to see. Remember there's a creek that flows between a couple of the lakes, and there's some big pools in the creek, and I remember the pilot flying over these ponds and looking down into the fish, this huge trout in the creeks that they're kind of locked in there and they can't get out, and they're an amazing size, but I don't think too many people knew they were there. We were.
You did a lot of fishing in the 1980s, right?
I fished in 70s and 80s. Every major fish haul in British Columbia, I've been in it.
You caught didn't you have a world record
Yeah,
lingcod?
that's correct. 44 pound on a 16 rod and reel. I got that when I was fishing with Bob Wright of the Oak Bay Marine Group in Victoria. Jack Kempf and I were fishing in the Queen Charlotte Islands, steelhead fishing, when he was called back to the Premier's office, and we had to rush out and get on a plane and fly back to Victoria, where they fired him for financial indiscretion, and that was an interesting day for me.
And then, so you're around this time, this is approaching the late 1980s, and you're going to leave government. You and your wife at the time, my mother, Jane, you split up. This is probably 1987. You get divorced. Victoria?
Probably 88, I would think, yeah, something like that.
So what was your next career arc after that? What happened?
Well, I went to work for Oak Bay Marine Group, and working with Bob Wright was not an easy thing to do. Everybody that knows him knows that. He had two personalities. One was the nicest, sweetest, intelligent man you ever want to meet, and the other was just an ornery, cranky old son of a gun that nobody wanted to be around. He'd yell and scream and make life uncomfortable. It was just his style. So after about a year, I left there and I went to work for Gary Santini at Park Lane Homes. Spent a year or so there, and I got involved in a plastic recycling opportunity, moved to Spokane, Washington. Spent some time down there. That failed. Pretty much took away what income I had into the business, and didn't have a lot anyway, but came back to Vancouver, had to kind of regroup, restart, and Herb Doman of Doman Industries said to me, well, why don't you come to work for me and manage our land holdings for us? So I went to work for Doman Industries, Western Forest Products. as a land manager and managed lands in New Westminster and on the island and different places on the coast. It was interesting times. Ended up managing a big property in Victoria area that sold off to a fellow by the name of Len Berry that became Bear Mountain. And I managed that property since 1992. Len Berry bought it in 2001, 2002, so I was there for 10 years before it became Bear Mountain, and I'm still associated with it today.
Okay, let's pause.